Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to Ummah Radio. You are listening to the Mustalahul Hadeeth class with myself, Abu Mus'ab. Alright, so we are still busy with the Muqaddimatun fi Usul al-Hadith of Mawlana Abdul Haq al-Dihlawi rahimahullah, and we previously just completed page 60, which was the end of chapter number 4. So tonight inshallah we begin with chapter number 5, Al-Fasl al-Khamisu fi al-Adalati wa wujuh al-Ta'n al-Muta'alliqatu biha. This is the 5th chapter which deals with Adala. We spoke previously about the conditions for a person to be accepted in Hadith, and we use certain terms like he must be Adal and Adlu Tam and stuff like this. So what exactly was meant by those terms is what we will be discussing in this chapter inshallah. So then to begin, Bismillah walhamdulillahi wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillahi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. So this one is Al-Fasl al-Khamis, the 5th chapter, which deals with Adala. If you were to just literally translate it, it means uprightness, reliability and things like this, justice. And it says وَوُجُوهُ الطَّعْنِ الْمُتَعَلِّقَةُ بِهَا, and the wujuh al-ta'n, what faults a person can find with which is related to adala, meaning a person is supposed to be adl, so what is there that removes him from being termed as being adl? This is what this chapter is about. So we move on to the first term. He says al-adala. وَالْعَدَالَةُ مَلَكَةٌ فِي الشَّخْصِ تَحْمِلُهُ عَلَى مُلَازَمَةِ التَّقْوَى وَالْمُرُوءَةِ. That in a nutshell, adala, it is that ability, that characteristic and quality in a person which carries him to remain on taqwa and muru'ah. Now muru'ah, if you were to linguistically translate it as well, it would say like a person's manhood and stuff of that sort. But muru'ah has its own definition as will come in this, the third term which is to come after taqwa. So like I say, we'll just call it manhood for now, and then you will see what the actual meaning, intended meaning is by that particular word. So moving on to the next one, which is taqwa. He says, التقوى والتقوى اجتناب الأعمال السيئة من الشرك والفسق والبدعة وفي الاجتناب عن الصغيرة خلاف والمختار عدم اشتراطه لخروجه عن الطاقة إلا الإصرار عليها لكونه كبيرة. He says that what is taqwa? Taqwa is to abstain from all evil deeds, from shirk, from fisq, and from bid'ah, innovations as well. And there's some ikhtilaf amongst the ulama regarding whether a person has to abstain from minor sins. When he's talking here about, when he used the term fisq, he meant any major sin. So whatever major sin a person is involved in, such a person is not a muttaqi. That is why he says there's ikhtilaf amongst the ulama about a person who commits minor sins. Does the person have to abstain from minor sins also in order, I mean, if he does, in other words, if he commits minor sins, can he be a muttaqi, yes or no? So there's ikhtilaf amongst the ulama, but he says the mukhtar, the chosen version is admu ishtiratihi, that it is not a condition for a person to abstain from the minor sins also in order to be termed a muttaqi. Why? لِخُرُوجِهِ عَنِ الطَّاقَةِ, because it's not within the capabilities of a person. Everybody sins, whether it's one sin that the person thinks is small or whatever the case may be, but people sin. So nobody is sinless. The Anbiya alayhimus salam are the only ones who are sinless. So sometime or the other you are going to be sinning. So if we were to place this condition that you have to be abstaining from even minor sins before you can be termed a muttaqi, then basically there would be no one who is a muttaqi. That is why if you do commit a minor sin here and there, but you abstain from the major sins, you do what you have been commanded and you abstain from what you have been prohibited from, you would be termed as being a muttaqi. But he says إِلَّا الْإِصْرَارُ عَلَيْهَا لِكَوْنِهِ كَبِيرًا, except if a person persists on a minor sin now. So there's a minor sin, but now you persist in it, and everything you do, keep on doing this particular sin over and over and over, then this minor sin would then evolve into becoming a major sin. So as long as a person is not perpetually involved in this particular minor sin, then in that case he would still be termed a muttaqi. Now, just quickly moving on to just to touch on the footnote, which is the basic definition of taqwa. He says, التقوى من صفات المؤمنين الأساسية وهي خشية الله تعالى في السر والعلن التي تحمل على اجتناب ما لا يرضاه الله وإتيان ما يرضاه حتى يقي الإنسان نفسه من عذابه وسخطه. والبحث في تقوى هنا من الناحية الأصولية. He says that taqwa, it is one of the characteristics, the basis of the characteristics of a believer. And taqwa, it is that khashiyatullah, that fear of Allah. But khashya is not just simply fear. Khashya is fear which is mixed with awe, and you can say that respect and everything. This is what khashya is. Khashya is different to khawf. Khawf is simply fear. But taqwa is not just simply being afraid. Taqwa is this fear mixed with love and awe and admiration and respect and everything. This is what khashya is about. So it is this khashya of Allah Ta'ala fi sirri wal alan, in secret and in open, التي تحمل على اجتناب ما لا يرضاه الله, which it prevents a person from taking part in anything which Allah will not be pleased with. Okay, question. Fear out of respect, yes, that would be, you would say, khashya is fear. It's not only to do with fear, but fear out of respect is more the type of fear that is inside this khashya. But like I say, it's because you respect a person so much, you have awe for a person and everything, so you don't want to cause anything or do anything which would harm this person, or which would make this person upset and things like this. This is all part of khashya. In any case, so he says it is that which will prevent a person from doing something which Allah is not pleased with, and wa ityani ma yaraddahu, and which will enable a person to do those things which Allah becomes pleased with. حتى يقي الإنسان نفسه من عذابه وسخطه, so much so that it will enable a person to safeguard himself from the punishment and the wrath of Allah. And then he says that the discussion on taqwa is here just from a usuli perspective. It's not it's just by the way that he's mentioning this here. Okay, so that was with regards to taqwa. But now we move on to the important point, which was muru'ah. So he says al-muru'ah. Now, what exactly is this muru'ah, which I translated earlier as manhood? He says, وَالْمُرَادُ بِالْمُرُؤَةِ التَّنَزُّهُ عَنْ بَعْضِ الْخَصَائِصِ وَالنَّقَائِصِ التي خلاف مقتضى الهمة والمروءة مثل بعض المباحات الدنيئة كالأكل والشرب في السوق والبول في الطريق وأمثال ذلك. He says that what is intended by muru'ah is to abstain from some of the lowly and flawed actions which are contrary to the required manhood and, as you can say, dignity which may be found in some lowly permissible actions. For example, eating and drinking in the marketplace and urinating in the street and stuff of this nature. Now I'm just going to read there's two footnotes over here, so we'll just quickly go to the footnotes. So footnote number 1, he says لا يحتاج إلى ذكر بعض فالخصائص والنقائص كلها بعيدة عن المروءة وينظر في ذلك إلى ما يعرفه من الخصائص شرعا أو عرفا. He says that there was no need for him to mention that the person should abstain from some of the lowly and things, because he says the lowly stuff of this nature, all of these things are far removed from the correct muru'ah, from the correct manhood of a person. So therefore a person has to abstain. A better word would have been to say to abstain from, to put it in the sense, التنزه عن كل الخصائص والنقائص. In other words, that's basically what he's saying, meaning you have to abstain from everything of these lowly things and not just some of them. And he says when it comes to these things here, recognizing them, then we will look from a shari'i perspective and also from a perspective of urf. The how it is regarded in this particular locality, person's culture, whatever the case may be, those things will be taken into consideration as well. We'll come to that in a moment after we do footnote number 2. So footnote number 2, he says, تستثني من ذلك. Okay, question. Are these lowly things equal sins, minor sins? No, these things are not sins. That's why he says it is بعض المباحات. It is a mubah action. It's not a sin. So if you do it, you're not sinful, but it goes contrary to what a person should be doing. So here, footnote number 2 tells you, for example, what are these sort of things. So he says, تستثنى من ذلك كما أن الأكل والشرب في السوق ينظر فيه إلى العرف، فشرب المشروبات من الشاي والبارد وتناول بعض الأشياء في السوق لا يعد في عرف اليوم مخالفا للمروءة. He says that like how eating and drinking in the marketplace, you will look at this from a perspective of urf. There's nothing in the Sharia which is mentioned regarding it. So you look at it from the point of urf. Now, urf changes from place to place, from country to country, from time to time, and so on and so forth. So, therefore, you will find the urf. Urf is the, as you can say, the custom. Urf, you can say, is custom. So, is it the custom of the honorable people that they do these sort of things or not? That is what is being discussed over here. So, in a case like this here, okay, here he's saying here that drinking certain drinks like tea and something cold and eating certain foods in the marketplace, in today's times, these things are not considered to be contrary to muru'ah. So, for example, a man's walking there in the street and he's eating whatever it may be, then, okay, when he's writing this, again, like I say, urf changes from country to country, from place to place. So, what one person may see as being not contrary to muru'ah, other ulama would say, no, this is something which is contrary to muru'ah. Now, okay, just one thing. When we talk about something which is contrary to muru'ah, then the term is khawarimul muru'ah. So, this eating and drinking in the street is what is termed as being from the khawarimul muru'ah. But, like he says, this is something which comes back to urf. Now you see in the urf, let's say for example, in America, urf, eating and drinking in the street is something normal. Nobody thinks anything about it. The so-called honorable people, respectable people do it just as much as the lowly people as well. So their urf, they don't consider anything bad in doing this thing. But then you take maybe for example in Saudi, for example, now maybe in Saudi, to be seen eating and drinking in the street, or let's say Pakistan or something of the sort, it's seen as something lowly. Then in this case the urf is different. So a person eating and drinking in the street over here will be termed as something which is khawarimul muru'ah. So this changes according to urf. You have from this point here many things. He only mentioned one simple example here of eating and drinking in the street, and the second one which I said was urinating in the street, for example. These are real examples, yes. Now, what is meant by this? In a general situation, it's more like you can say the lowly people who would stand just somewhere against the side of a wall and relieve himself over there. Although everyone can see he's relieving himself over there, even though none of he's not exposing his aura or anything of the sort, but everybody knows what he is doing. This is not something which any decent, honorable, respectable person does. So something like this is terms from the khawarimul muru'ah. He's doing these sort of things in public. So whether it's this passing of urine like this in the street, if a person is eating pan and spitting like this in the street, for example, as the different urf and of places is, so it shall be. And when it comes to the khawarimul muru'ah between ulama and between the ordinary people, there is a distinction made there as well. when it comes to ulama, they are expected to have a higher level basically than the normal man in the street. So for example, if a scholar, an alim, is now walking around with dressed in a suit and tie, bareheaded and stuff like this, to many this is termed as being from the khawarim al-muru'ah, whereas we know ulama are supposed to be dressing properly. In fact, you coming to learn deen from an alim, and the alim is clean shaven, is wearing a tight shirt with a chain around his neck, shaven beard, and he's walking around like this wearing skinny jeans. This is not what, okay, even if this was a normal person, this would throw him out from being a adil, a reliable person that you can accept anything from such a person. But obviously now it's on a much higher scale if this is an alim. Like I say, for a normal man in the street, for example, if he were to wear let's say he's wearing a suit, for example, people don't think much about it. But if an alim now wears a suit, people look at him entirely different. They're both doing the same thing, but one is an alim and one is a non-alim. So therefore, in the eyes of the people, as far as Urf is concerned, the alim is doing wrong by dressing like this, even though they don't pay any attention to the normal layman who's dressing like that. So these things are all what are taken into consideration as well. And like I say, this is things which change from country to country. So in certain places, for a person to walk around bareheaded is something bad. And in fact, even if I'm not mistaken, Sheikh Albani, in one of his kitabs, he mentioned that to perform salah with a person's head uncovered, the salah is makruh tahrimi. This was his fatwa, and this is in fact the fatwa of the madahib as well. I'm not certain if it's all the madahib, but in any case, that's the fatwa given by the ulama, that salah performed without a topi, is without a person's head covered, whether it's a turban, whatever the case may be, it is something which is incorrect from what it should be, because the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to perform salah wearing a headgear, a head covering. So things like this here. So if you find an alim walking around with a bare head, then people would think, as you would say, this is from the lowly. Technically it's permissible if he wants to walk there. It will not be, you can't say, it won't be saying that he is sinning if you see him standing over there and his head is bare, but it is something which is termed as being a lowly action, and therefore it is from the khawarim al-muru'ah. So this is what will differ from place to place as per the urf of that particular place. So that is now what muru'ah is. So as you can see, when it comes to you can think about a million different examples on this topic here. Here he's just giving an example of eating and drinking in the street and urinating in the street, which were, so to say, the common practice of that time. That's why he's giving those sort of examples. In today's times, we see many other sort of things. So whether it's a scholar who want to be ghetto style speech and things like this, in order to communicate, as people use it today, they want to communicate with the youth, so they go overboard in their things. So actions of this nature will also put it as being from the khawarim al-muru'ah. So when it comes, really, in all honesty, when it comes to if we look at the muhaddithin's acceptance of a hadith, and we look at the people of today's times, then nobody would be qualified to narrate a hadith, or I should say at least most of the ummah would be, their narrations would be rejected by the muhaddithin, because for all these various reasons. Alright, so in any case, so that was muru'ah. Now we move on to another point he just mentioned. He says adlu riwaya a'ammu min adli shahada, that the adl, the justice, and okay, I'm just translating it as justice, but we know now what Adaalah is all about. So he says the Adaalah of a Rawi, for a person to narrate a hadith and things of this sort, it is more general than Adl of Shahada, than to give witness. So to narrate and to give witness in a particular case and things, there's a difference between the two. He says وَيَنْبَغِي أَن يَعْلَمَ أَنَّ عَدْلَ الرِّوَايَةِ أعم من عدل الشهادة فإن عدل الشهادة مخصوص بالحر والعدل الرواية يشمل الحر والعبد. He says that it's important to note that the adl of narrating a hadith, it is more general and unrestricted than the adl of shahada of giving witness, because the adl of shahada, it is a condition that the person who gives testimony, he must be a free person. But when it comes to narrating a hadith, then this will encompass both a free person and a slave as well. So if a slave is upright in things of the sort and he narrates a hadith, you can accept it from him. But if a slave is upright in everything and he wants to bear testimony, his testimony is not counted. So that's why he's saying that you have the general term which is being adl. But when we are talking about adl in the sense of riwayah and adl in the sense of shahada, then there's a slight distinction made between the two. Okay, now we move on to the next point, and the next point is another term which question: a slave can't be a rawi. No, quite the opposite. A slave can be a rawi. It's a slave can't be a witness, but when it comes to being a rawi, then a slave can be a rawi. That's why he says وَعَدْلُ الرِّوَايَةِ يَشْمِلُ الْحُرَّ وَالْعَبْدِ, that the adl of a riwayah encompasses both the free person and the slave as well. Okay, just to repeat again. So he was speaking about the adl of riwayah and the adl of shahada, in that the adl of riwayah. Okay, what's the difference between a rawi and a shahid? The shahid here is what he's talking about in a court case, let's say for example, a master and he has his slave and his only witness is his slave, that I lent money to this person here, the testimony of the slave can't be accepted. These are the sort of cases that we are talking about. Shahada, a shahid, is in this sense here. It's got nothing to do with narrating of a hadith. While here he's speaking about the riwayah from the perspective of hadith, that can we accept a hadith from a slave? And basically the ruling was that yes, you can accept a hadith which is reported by a slave. The next term now, moving onward, he says Dhabt. Now Dhabt we passed by previously in one of the earlier chapters as well, and we passed, as you can say, gave it a simple, as you would say, a simple translation to say that Dhabt refers to a person's grasp, his understanding, how well he comprehended the hadith which was narrated to him, his accuracy and things of that sort. So now he explains that what it is. He says وَالْمُرَادُ بِالضَّبْطِ حِفْظُ الْمَسْمُوعِ وتثبيته من الفوات والاختلال بحيث يتمكن من استحضاره. He says that when we're talking about the dhabt of a person now, that a person has to be dhabit, as we passed the term previously, then he says that it is the dhabt here is the hifdhul masmu', that the person has to memorize what he has heard. So a hadith was reported to him and he memorized those exact words. وَتَثْبِيتُهُ مِنَ الْفَوَاتِ, and he preserved and protected it from losing and missing anything, and wal-ikhtilal, or there being any confusion or any holes, any deficiencies of the sort. He says بحيث يتمكن من استحضاره, to the extent so that he is able to bring forth the narration, it's present in his mind. So this is what we termed as being dhabt, that the person has memorized fully, to put it in simple words, he has memorized fully the words which were narrated to him, and he has kept it firmly established in his mind, so he can quote it at will without making any faults or mistakes. That is what is termed by Dhabt. Now he moves on to two different types. He says Ad-Dhabtu Qisman. That Dhabt is broken down into two types. He says Dhabtu Sadr wa Dhabtu Kitab. That you have the let's call it, just simply translate Dhabt as preservation. So he says you have the preservation of the heart and you have the preservation from the Kitab as well. He says وَهُوَ قِسْمَانِ ضَبْطُ الصَّدْرِ وَضَبْطُ الْكِتَابِ, which is broken into two types, the preservation of the heart and the preservation of the Kitab. Moving on to the next page, he says فَضَبْطُ الصَّدْرِ بِحِفْظِ الْقَلْبِ وَوَعِيهِ وَضَبْطُ الْكِتَابِ بِصِيَانَتِهِ عِنْدَهُ إِلَى وَقْتِ الْأَدَاءِ. He says that the preservation of the heart is that the person, when we talk about hifz al-qalb, it means he memorizes it with his heart and he preserves and protects it in there, which is basically the term which was used previously to explain what dhabt itself is, that the person has memorized the words and has it clear in his mind what it is without having any faults or flaws or deficiencies in it, and is able to narrate it at will. That is what is termed as dhabt al-sadr. The second type is dhabt al-kitab. He says that is بِصِيَانَتِهِ عِنْدَهُ إِلَى وَقْتِ الْأَدَاءِ. That a person has written a hadith down in a book and he has it preserved and protected until the time when he is needed to narrate it. So that is basically, as you would say, the hadith that would be more in today's times. In the times of the muhaddithin, you had both types of people. There were those who narrated from their memory and there were those who narrated from their books. Now, one of the famous narrators who is termed as being a weak narrator is a narrator by the name of Abdullah ibn Lahi'a. Whenever you come across his name in the books of Jarh wa Ta'dil, you will see him being termed as being a weak narrator. Now, the thing with Abdullah ibn Lahi'a is that he had a weak memory, and he used to be a narrator of Dhabtul Kitab. He used to have all his ahadith written down, and he had books and books and books of ahadith which he had reported. Obviously, everything had the asanid inside it. So when he used to narrate a hadith to someone, he would narrate the hadith from his notebooks, basically, where he had noted all these ahadith down. And he used to keep all these notebooks of his in his house. One day, his house had caught on fire, and all his books inside had burnt out, and therefore thereafter Abdullah ibn Lahi'a, when he would narrate a hadith, he would now narrate it from memory because he no longer had his books anymore. And because of his weak memory, he used to get confused and mixed up and things. He was never a liar, but because of his weak memory, he made mistakes in his narration. So therefore the narrations of Abdullah ibn Lahi'a, his narrations are termed as being da'if. But just on the point of his narrations itself, is that there are certain rawis who report from Abdullah ibn Lahi'a whose narrations are accepted, and there are others whose narrations are not accepted. Now, what is the reason for that? The reason is that, for example, one of the accepted narrators is Imam Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak rahimahullah. If he reports from Abdullah ibn Lahi'a, then that narration will be accepted. What is the reason for that? The reason is that when Imam Abdullah ibn Mubarak studied under Abdullah ibn Lahi'a, at that time Abdullah ibn Lahi'a had all his kitabs, and when Imam ibn Mubarak left him, he still had his kitabs. So therefore, whatever Imam Abdullah ibn Mubarak reports from him, we can take that as being from the authentic narrations. But then there were other people who came later on, after he had already lost his kitabs, and they heard from him when he was narrating from memory. So with his weak memory, their narrations will now not be accepted. Then you had those people who learned by him when he had his kitabs, and who learned by him still after he lost his kitabs as well. So in this case, where we don't know when it was, their narrations also will be in question. So that is why you will find that is why you will find a distinction on that point. So in any case, that is now what we term as being Dhabtul Kitab, that the person has the hadith written down. So if someone comes to you and say, narrate the hadith to me, then you open up your book and you say, حدثني فلان حدثني فلان قال حدثنا and so on until قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, and he narrates the hadith in that sense. So the hadith is preserved in a book form, that will be accepted as well. So there, that is the two types: the Dhabtul Sadr, which is the actual preservation by memory, that you have memorized the narration in its entirety fully, and you have preserved it in your heart, and you are able to narrate it at will. That is the one type. And the second type is preserving it in book format. Okay, question here: kitab as in notes or actual published kitab? Whichever way it may be, but in this sense here, the Dhabtul Kitab is that the person has written the hadith down. So a published kitab and somebody else has a hold of the kitab, it's not quite the same thing, because if that person is just simply have your kitab, he did not hear the hadith from you, he did not verify, did you write the kitab? So it is a slight distinction. So when we talk here Dhabtul Kitab, that when he wrote the hadith down in his kitab, he wrote it down properly. He was listening, but he didn't hear everything properly. So when they said maybe qalb, he wrote qalb with a kaf instead of a qaf, because maybe he didn't hear right, so he wrote wrong. All these sort of things here, like when we said it is a hifdhul masmu', he memorized the exact words which were stated. So in a like manner, he wrote down the exact words which were stated. And like I say now, whether he wrote it in a notebook or whether he wrote it in a book and had it published and made copies of it, both cases will be fine. It's not to have to be, as you can say, a kitab which was published and sent all around. If it's just his own personal notebook that he has there in his house, that is 100% perfect. The point is preserving the hadith word for word in this correct format like this, so that when it's time to narrate it, you can do so without any problems. That's what the whole point of Dhabt is about. Now we're moving on to, it's actually a bit of a separate topic, but it's related to the topic of Adaalah as well. And this here is basically what you can say, what causes a person now to know why we will not accept a hadith from a person. In other words, what we have learned here is the type which are termed those hadith you can accept from a person. A person has to be tamul dhabt and be adil and stuff of the sort here. So if these characteristics are found in him, then we will accept his hadith. But if the following characteristics are found in him, then we will not be accepting his narrations. So this part that we are coming to here now is the characteristics which are bad, which are not supposed to be found in a rawi. So he says وجوه الطعن المتعلقة بالعدالة. He says the various ways that a person will find fault with a person's adala. He says أما العدالة فوجوه الطعن المتعلقة بها خمس. He says when it comes to adala, there are 5 ways of 5 angles that a person would find a fault with it. He says الأول بالكذب. The first one is that the person has been a liar. He lied. And okay, I don't want to jump again because he'll explain that in the very next term. So the first type is kidb, that the person has been a liar. وَالثَّانِي بِاتِّهَامِهِ بِالْكِذْب. It is sufficient for a person to be accused of being a liar. It doesn't have to be proven. Sufficient that he is accused of being a liar, and then his narration will not be accepted. Number 3, وَالثَّالِثُ بِالْفِسْقِ. The third category is of fisq. A person is an open sinner, he's a person who engages in major sins. In this case also, we don't accept his narration. وَالرَّابِعُ بِالْجَهَالَةِ. The fourth one is with jahala, which is a person who is ignorant. So, he's ignorant and don't know what he's talking about, we won't accept his narration. And the last one, وَالْخَامِسُ بِالْبِدْعَةِ. A person who is engaged in bid'ah, in innovation. So to just repeat them again: number 1, lies. Number 2, accused of being a liar. Number 3, fisq, open sinning or major sins. And 4, ignorance. And 5, bid'ah. Those are the 5 categories. And of course, a person's narration, the authenticity and acceptability will differ according to these various categories. So the first type is, he says, al-kidhb. He says, وَالْمُرَادُ بِكِذْبِ الرَّاوِي أَنَّهُ ثَبَتَ كذبه في الحديث النبوي صلى الله عليه وسلم إما بإقرار الواضع أو بغير ذلك من القرائن. He says that what is intended by when we say a narrator is a liar, he says it is that it is established that he has lied in a hadith of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, إما بإقرار الواضع, either by the person, the fabricator himself admitting to it, or due to some other signs that the muhaddithin would see that no, this is a lie. So if it's established once that the person has lied, then never will we accept his narration ever again. But in any case, that will come now in a moment. So he says, he explains about lying. He says, al-mawdu'. He says, وَحَدِيثُ الْمَطْعُونِ بِالْكِذْبِ يُسَمَّى مَوْضُوعًا. A hadith of a person who is al-mat'unu bil-kidhb, a person who has this problem, this blemish on his character of kidhb on him, then his ahadith are termed as being mawdu'. I just want to read this last point over here, the hukmu muta'ammidul kidhb, this last one, and we can then stop on that point, inshallah, to not leave things hanging in the lurch. He says وَمَنْ ثَبَتَ عَنْهُ تَعَمُّدُ الْكِذْبِ فِي الْحَدِيثِ وَإِنْ كَانَ فِي الْعُمْرِ مَرَّةً وَإِنْ تَابَ مِنْ ذَلِكَ لَمْ يُقْبَلْ حَدِيثُهُ أَبَدًا بِخِلَافِ شَاهِدُ الزُّورِ إِذَا تَابَ. He says, when it is this chapter is the ruling on a person who intentionally lied in a hadith. If a person lied about not buying the bread, that is not the type of lies we are speaking about here. He says, when it is established that the person has lied in a hadith of which he says to be from Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he says, وَإِنْ كَانَ فِي الْعُمْرِ مَرَّةً, even if he only did it once in his entire life, وَإِنْ تَابَ مِنْ ذَلِكَ, even if he repented from that, he can repent till the cows come home, لَمْ يُقْبَلْ حَدِيثُهُ أَبَدًا, his narrations will never ever be accepted. He says, بِخِلَافِ شَاهِدُ الزُّورِ, contrary to a person who gives false testimony, إِذَا تَابَ, if such a person who gives false testimony in court, if he gives false testimony and then he repents, we can still accept his narration. But if you lie about a hadith, never again will any hadith ever be accepted from you ever again in your entire life. So say a person in his young days, he decide to eat whatever reason, and he makes one single fabrication, one lie, he makes up a lie, he claims it's a hadith, then he becomes the greatest saint. His narrations will still never be accepted as a result of that one lie of his. So moving just to footnote number 1, he says, وَهَذَا إِحْتِيَاطًا وَتَوَرُّعًا فِي الْحَدِيثِ النَّبَوِيِّ الشَّرِيفِ وَهِيَ غَايَةٌ فِي الْحَيْطَةِ وَالْمَوْضُوعِيَّةِ الْعِلْمِيَّةِ الدَّقِيقَةِ بلغها المحدثون في صيانة حديث نبيهم صلى الله عليه وسلم عن كل إلحاق وكذب واختلاق. He says, this is the extent of the ihtiyat, the caution, and the tawarru', how they would be, how cautionary they would be when it comes to the hadith of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It is the height of caution and this minute methodology in how they would reject the narrations of all a person if he has been accused of if it has been proven from him that he has lied about a hadith, even if it was just once in his life. Maybe he tells the truth the rest of his life when he narrates a hadith, but still we will never accept a single one of those narrations because of that one lie that he had made. He says, this level the muhaddithin had gone to in protecting the hadith of the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam from all additions, from all lies and all fabrication. That is why it's such a serious offense. Okay, question. Lying in hadith, is it the same as lying in the deen? When it comes to matters of the deen, then it would depend on what the lie is. So let's say, for example, a person makes up a lie and says that this is part of the deen. Then obviously, when you make up a lie and you're saying that this is from the deen, who does it come from? If you're saying that Imam so and so said so, then it's not quite the same as though you're saying that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said so. But if a person say this is what has come from the deen of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he knows that he's lying, then he's in the same category as well. But this is now we're talking about a person who is a fabricator of hadith. Obviously, if a person is a liar in normal dunyawi matters, like you can say, you ask him a normal thing, did you buy the bread? And he lie and he say, yeah, I bought the bread, and even though he did not buy the bread, something you would say, something small and simple like this, the muhaddithin would not even accept his narrations. There's that story, that famous story, Imam Bukhari rahimahullah and the horse, as it's normally termed, that Imam Bukhari rahimahullah heard about this person who had a narration which he did not have, and he traveled such a far distance to meet this person to get this hadith from him. And when he came there, then Imam Bukhari saw this man standing there with a sack in his hand, motioning for the horse to come forward as though he's got food in the bag. So when the horse came forward and to put its mouth in the bag, then he put the rope around the horse's neck and tied the horse up. So Imam Bukhari rahimahullah had asked the man, is there food in the bag? So the man said, no, I just do it like this so that he can come, then I can catch him. Then Imam Bukhari said, oh okay, and he turned around and he walked away. So the man was like, that aren't you the one who said you were going to be coming? Because he was not expecting any other guests. So aren't you the person who said he was coming for the hadith? So Imam Bukhari said, that is me, yes. But if you can deceive a horse, an animal like this, what won't you do to me? So on that, the basis of him deceiving an animal, the muhaddithin like Imam Bukhari rahimahullah would not accept his narration. So obviously, if a person is lying anything dini related, far removed are the muhaddithin to ever accept a narration from such a person. Anyhow, coming back, so that was now the ruling with regards to a person who intentionally lied, and that is the end of page 63. Moving on to page 64, he says, Al-Muradu bil-Mawdu'. That, we normally hear this term as being Mawdu', it's a Mawdu' hadith, it's a fabrication and things like this. We always hear it, but what exactly does it mean? He says here, فالمراد بالحديث الموضوع في اصطلاح المحدثين هذا لا أنه ثبت كذبه وعلم في ذلك وعلم ذلك في هذا الحديث بخصوصه. He says, when the muhaddithin talk about a hadith being mawdu' in their terminology, then they refer to a narration like this, meaning a narration which has been reported by a person who had lied one time in his life about a hadith. Not that this particular narration which he is reporting here in particular is a fabrication. The narration is reporting now may be authentic, but it's termed as being mawdu' because he is a mawdu' rawi. If obviously we're talking now in the sense that we don't already have this hadith with an authentic chain. We're talking about the chain of this particular hadith in particular that he has reported over here. Although, let's say, for example, let's take a famous one, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Now, a person who lied, fabricated a hadith, now he comes along and he reports this hadith. When it comes to this chain in particular that he has reported it, we would term his chain here as being a fabrication. So, technically, that hadith would be termed as being a fabrication, even though it's reported as you can say, authentically with a sahih sanad from somewhere else. So that's if we're talking in particular, even though he may not be lying at all about that hadith and he's speaking 100% the truth, but because of him being a mawdu' rawi, all his narrations are termed as being mawdu'. Mawdu' rawi meaning a rawi, a narrator who fabricates. So moving to footnote number 1, he explains what he says. He says يعني إن ثبت عنه الكذب مرة واحدة في الحديث عدت جميع أحاديثه موضوعة، فحيثما يقال هذا حديث موضوع لا يعني ذلك بالضرورة أن الوضع والكذب علم في ذلك الحديث بعينه، بل معناه بصفة عامة أن راويه وضاع كذاب وكفى. He says that if it is, okay, question here. So mawdu' is his character, not necessarily the hadith itself. That is correct. And this is what was just mentioned here. He says, يعني, if it is established that he has lied one time in his life about a hadith, then all his following narrations will be termed as being mawdu'. So when the muhaddithin say, هذا حديث موضوع, that this hadith in mawdu', it does not necessarily mean that the lie and the fabrication is in this particular hadith itself that they are speaking about. But what is meant بصفة عامة in a general sense is that the narrator of this hadith, either وضاع, a kadhab, a fabricating liar, and that alone is sufficient. So nothing that comes out of his mouth will ever be accepted. That's basically what it is. So when we talk about a hadith being mawdu', then in simple words, it is that the narrator is a fabricator. So this narration in particular, maybe it has a support from another narration, but this one in particular would be termed as being a fabrication. Alright, we're going to be stopping then on that point over there. The next one, it's also related, but this now is, as you could say, not confirmed that the person is a liar. This is now the muttahim bil kidb. So that we'll leave for next time. Okay, just a question over here. Lying is a major sin. Is lying a major sin, like how we learned from the taqwa definition? Yes, lying is a major sin, and it is further, as you can say, made worse as a result of lying where the deen is concerned, lying where, as Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, "Man kadhaba alayya muta'ammidan falyatabawa maq'adahu min an-nar," that whoever lies against me, makes up a narration and attributes it to me which I have not said, then let him prepare his abode in Jahannam. So a person is being given the warning that you will end up in Jahannam as a result of a lie. So it's not anything small about it. Okay, another question over here. Can we take virtues from ahadith that are mawdu', or do we reject them completely? When it comes to mawdu' narrations, then we reject them completely. We take, for fadail, for virtues, benefits, we take that from weak narrations, not from mawdu'. What you can take, I would say, from a mawdu' narration, sometimes you come across a dua which is reported by a fabricator. The wordings of the dua is something which is fine. There's nothing wrong with the wordings. But obviously it's not proven to be from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So in this case here, this dua, the words of this dua could be used as being your own words, not attributing it to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and if you were to use it in that sense, it would be fine. You can't. It's not to say now that because these words were used in a fabrication, now it cannot be used no more. That is not correct. So as long as you are not claiming this to be a hadith now or anything, then if you were to use it in that sense, then it would be fine. Alright, so coming back to where we were. Question asks here, these qualities are verified by who? And these characters are to be found in all muhaddithin. Okay, these qualities, which qualities exactly? Oh, okay. So the qualities and characteristics of the narrators, is that what is being spoken about? Okay, when it comes to these things, then there are the books of Jarh wa Ta'adil. Jarh is when there's a fault with the person, and Ta'adil is when the person is good. So the books of Jarh wa Ta'adil, you have At-Tahdhib al-Tahdhib, Tahdhib al-Kamal, Al-Thiqat, and various other books of the Muhaddithin, Imam Dhahabi, Mizan al-I'tidal, all these books of the Muhaddithin, where all the narrators are written down. Let's say, for example, Abdullah ibn Lahi'a, then they would say Abdullah ibn Lahi'a, whatever his full name is, he's from this place here, he's from Basra, this one is from Iraq, he was born in this year, and he heard hadith from so and so and so, and the so and so and so all narrated from him. He was acceptable, or he was weak, or he had a weak memory, or he was a liar, or this and that. All of these things will be mentioned in the books of, like I say, all these books of Jarh wa Ta'adil. Like Al-Thiqat only contains the narrators who are authentic. Then you have Al-Majruhin, which will only contain the weak narrators again on the other side. So, and on this point here of who is authentic and not authentic, you will find ikhtilaf amongst the ulama on that point there. Some may say that the narrator is acceptable, and others may say that you cannot accept a hadith from such a narrator. So when it comes to that point, then, okay, question, these narrators are tabi'ut, whether they are tabi'ut, and later on, all of them have been recorded. Everybody who's in a hadith, who has reported a hadith, he has been put down in the books of the muhaddithin. And if somebody is not there, then he's termed as being a majhul rawi, he is an unknown narrator. So anybody who's anybody, if he's been a narrator of a hadith, his name would be found 99% of the time in that book, and those names who are not found in there, they are the unknown people. Okay, so coming back to where I was speaking about that, the muhaddithin, you find a difference. One would say you can accept from him, another one would come and say you can't accept from him. So what is the reason for that? The ulama have explained, when it comes to the muhaddithin themselves, they are broken down into three types. Those who are very strict in the criteria, those who are middle of the road, and there are those who are more lax. So, for example, you have In fact, take a physical example. In the Mustadrak of Imam Hakim, rahimahullah, Imam Hakim is termed to be more amongst the, so to say, the lax ones. He reports the hadith in his Mustadrak that in this narration, on the day of Qiyamah, when Hazrat Fatima radiallahu anha will pass, a caller will call out and say, "O people, lower your gaze," because this is Hazrat Fatima radiallahu anha passing by, and they will lower their gaze until she passes by. Now Imam Hakim, he says this narration is authentic. Imam Dhahabi, he does the talkhis, he gives his commentary on the narrations, whether they are authentic or not. Many times he agrees and he says, yes, the hadith is authentic, the hadith is hasan, whatever the case may be. But on this narration here, Imam Hakim says it's authentic, Imam Dhahabi says no, quite the contrary, in fact it's a fabrication. So you find things like this. Imam Dhahabi, Imam Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, Hafiz al-Iraqi, Imam Sakhawi, they are termed as being middle of the road. So their narration, their gradings would be take more preference. For example, now you have, for example, someone like Imam Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah. He is amongst the more mutashaddid ones. He is the more strict types. So if Imam Ibn Qayyim says a hadith is fabricated or it's weak, and Imam Ibn Hajar says the narration is authentic, we would take Imam Ibn Hajar. If Imam Hakim says a narration is authentic and Imam Ibn Hajar says the narration is not authentic, we take Imam Ibn Hajar who says that it's not authentic. So that's how it goes. If the middle of the road muhaddithin have graded something in a particular way, and the ones on the two extremes, if they give their versions which contradicts that, then we go with the middle of the road ones. But in any case, even on that sense, it's not a blanket ruling in that regard, in the sense that when it comes to certain narrators, certain ulama would have graded maybe a certain person to be authentic, and others would have graded him to be weak. Now, one person knew him better than the other person, so the one who knew him better says he was weak, and the one who knew him less said he was authentic. Or it could be that one person met him at one particular time, and so when he wrote him down, he said, okay, this person, he was this and this, he was reliable. Now, later on in his life, he changed and he became evil, or he started lying and things, so the other muhaddith wrote him down as being someone bad. So that is why you find all this difference of opinion amongst the muhaddithin. Imam Ibn Hajar says he's this, Imam Ahmad says he's as you can say, he's a liar. Imam Sufyan al-Thawri maybe said he's reliable. So you find all these differences of opinion for various reasons. Then there was also that amongst certain of the ulama, they were, as some ulama say, sometimes being human, maybe they had a problem with a particular person also. So whatever that problem may be, maybe he was in his normal dealings and things, he was unreliable, so they would also put him as unreliable in this regard here. But then another alim may say that no, when it comes to his ahadith, he had reported authentic ones only, so they would then give more permission for it that way. So you find all this difference over there. So that is why when it comes to the point of jarh wa ta'dil, you have to check what all the muhaddithin have said with regards to this individual narrator. So you see, Imam Ibn Hibban says this, Imam Ibn Hajar says this, Imam Dhahabi says this, and things like that. And then you see who knew him better. Who, like you can say, one man is living in a different country and he's writing about him, and the other person is living in the same town as him and he's writing about him. So you see who knows him better, who knew him longer, and things of that sort. And finally, that's how you come to a conclusion as to whether to accept the narration of this person or not. Alright, question over here: who was the strictest in acceptance of a hadith? When it comes to the strictest in the criteria of acceptance of ahadith, then Imam Bukhari rahimahullah was, so to say, the strictest. Because when it comes to, okay, I would not say, okay, technically yes, Imam Bukhari rahimahullah was the strictest, because when we're speaking about Sahih al-Bukhari itself, obviously in other kitabs of Imam Bukhari like Adab al-Mufrad and those ones, he never put down this condition that he will only put the highest level of authenticity in that particular kitab, so therefore you will find weak ahadith in there as well, and Imam Bukhari knows it's weak and reports it as well. So I wouldn't say that as you can say, it's all on one category. It's hard to say who is the most strictest, because Imam Ahmad rahimahullah was very similar like to Imam Bukhari rahimahullah. They reported authentic ahadith, and if it was for fadail and things of that sort, they would also accept a weak narration. That is why when it comes to as you can say masail, then Imam Ahmad rahimahullah is reported to have said that a weak narration is more beloved and accepted to me than personal opinion. So if there was a weak hadith and there was the choice of personal opinion, he would rather take the weak narration before he takes a personal opinion. That was now Imam Ahmad, and various other muhaddithin, different viewpoints and things of that sort. But anyhow, on the whole, they were, like I say, the middle of the road ulama. They were more, they stuck to being strict, and others, them being not so strict benefited everyone as well. Because why were they not strict? It's not that they weren't strict in that sense, but rather it's that they reported everything they could get a hold of. And that is why the sanad is so important, that they will report a hadith with the sanad over here, so that if some other muhaddith comes along and happens to find it with another chain, then he would be able to make tatbiq and say, okay, here's a narration, two different sanads, this one can strengthen that one, and the narration could be raised up to a higher authenticity, to being hasan and that of the sort. But now, if the muhaddith had not written down the narration at all, by the time the other muhaddith came along with his one sanad, maybe his one is weak, then that narration would possibly have been discarded, and we would not be making amal upon it, because it would be termed as da'if and not as being hasan. So you can't derive ahkam from it. So the muhaddithin noting down and writing down and including in their kitabs weak narrations was not to, as you can say, make things like some people like to claim and say that they wanted to just do their own thing and bring in fabrications and stuff of the sort. Far from it. They were working towards the preservation of the deen, that I don't know all the hadith in the world, so if someone comes along and they know this hadith as well, well and good, alhamdulillah, and they can take it further from that point. So that is why they would report weak narrations, and sometimes even, as you can say, the fabrications in their kitab. Now, on that point there, whether it's a fabrication, like I say, from one muhaddith to another, there's this difference of opinion. Maybe when the time the muhaddith reported him this narration, he didn't know that this man was a liar, so he wrote it down, he put it in his kitab, and later on the muhaddithin said, no, this man that you have over here, this person who were in his time, and said he fabricated this narration here, so therefore none of his narrations are reliable, so therefore this one, even though it's in your kitab, but it will also be termed as being mawdu' as well. So that's how it goes. Okay, so the next point over here will now be moving on to the term, as you say, the ittiham bil-kidh, muttahimun bil-kidh, a person who is accused of being a liar. The whole part here was to do with intentional lying. So next time, inshallah, we will move on to the topic of a person being accused of being a liar, even though it has not been established. But But that inshallah we will do next time. Are there any questions with regards to anything that has been done here tonight? Alright then, seeing as we have no further questions, we will then end on this point inshallah. So until next time, we will end for now and we say وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد سبحان الله وبحمده سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.